All right. Thanks, Karen, for explaining our new tech situation here and for navigating that and all the other tech issues that can come up. Welcome, everyone, to this webinar on titled The Power of Shared Writing, where we are going to look broadly at young children's writing and then zoom in on a particular instructional strategy for supporting it, known as shared writing. Gratitude to all of you for being here. I hope your day was full of children exploring their ideas and how they can put those down in ways to communicate them with other people. And hopefully, when you are back with them tomorrow, you will have some other ways to support that. And thank you to Karen and everyone at the Center in Illinois for making this and all of these webinars possible and for making them run smoothly, no matter what Zoom or any of the other tech folks do for us. So let me just give a quick frame here. I'd invite us to think about this session as really trying to explore the power of writing, not just of this strategy of shared writing, but really the power of writing in preschool and kindergarten, recognizing that there's a huge challenge there for children, that writing really is a place where children are orchestrating all of their literacy skills, listening, speaking, and reading skills, and recognizing that there's a really wide discrepancy in the backgrounds that children come into our early childhood lives with in terms of both their skills and their motivation. Some children have had a lot of support. Some children have had a lot of models. Other children, especially now, whatever writing they may have seen has been on screens, and we're still asking them to use writing implements. And so, some interesting challenges there. I would note that the area of the classroom in many classrooms that is the place that's sort of designed for writing, the writing center, can be one of those places where we are looking for ways to engage children, have them take up that writing implement with eagerness and delight. It would be wonderful if kids had to sign in for turns to use the writing center the way they do for the laptop or whatever that might be. So what we're going to be about here is a writing strategy that really scaffolds all of children's writing skills so that they not only develop the mechanics, but also what I would describe as the purpose and the voice of writers. Um, let's see. We always begin by giving people just a little bit of time to settle. So if you need that, this is your moment to do whatever you need to do to either collect your stuff or collect your brain, depending on how your day is going, or to um, get the cat snuggled in on your lap or whatever that might be. I see some folks at home, some people at work, whatever you might need for a moment here. Or if nothing else, just take a nice breath. All right, so let's step into writing. And I think where I would like to begin is by thinking some about how children experience models of writing. So I'd invite you to think about your day with young children, whether that's preschool, kindergarten, whatever that might be, and think about the times when children have opportunities to see you write, see you compose, create print, share it with them. And if folks would want to share any comments in the chat about when children see you write, the question of the day, daily message, taking attendance. Okay, so we've got some that are very explicitly about writing for in front of children, question of the day and messages. And then one of the things I like about taking attendance is that there is, and lunch is that those are sort of functional tasks, right? They're things that we're doing because that's what because we use writing for powerful purposes. And that's one of the things we want to model. Absolutely. Okay. Um, Morning message, practice writing letters. Okay. The letter of the week words. Um, Dictations, writing for children, journals, chats. So there are lots of times with young children, especially when we are hearing children's ideas and then we're the ones making the marks, right? As Leanne says, writing about what they've drawn, okay? Guided writing, super. So all on their artwork. So, all right, teaching ninth grade. Well, welcome here, Mark. They see you writing all the time, and hopefully they've got most of this down. Signing in. So many different opportunities. And what I want to highlight here is that, uh, you know, children learn aspects of writing the same way they learn many other things at the beginning, especially, and that is seeing it used by other people for functional purposes. And so when we do writing because we accomplish something like the attendance or because we're involving them in something like question of the day, then they see that there's not only how to do it, but also the why to do it. And that's especially true when we're writing their dictation and those kinds of things, where they see that if they have an idea, that idea can be held and then shared with others through this kind of miracle of writing. Which, I mean, I say that the miracle of writing. Writing actually hasn't been around that long in terms of the history of humans, a few thousand years, which is not a long time, really, when you think about how long we people have been doing stuff. So children are seeing you do writing. And what I want to think with you about then is some about like what can we do when we are doing that writing in front of them, and then a particular strategy for that. And so our conversation is really going to have three purposes. The first is let's just get some shared agreement about what it is that we're trying to support children in learning. Like what are the sort of skills of early writing that we want to make sure that we got something going on here. We want to make sure that we are supporting. So, excuse me, just a minute. I think I can leave that. Yeah. So we will. Mindy's given us an example there, and we will look more broadly at that at the various ways that we can. Like the directions that we're going with writing. And so that will be a starting point for us. I want to share with you this particular strategy of shared writing and think with you some about where it fits into a writing curriculum. And then we will look very explicitly at some shared writing activities. And I see lots of examples over here showing up of ways that we support writing. Let me get rid of that. There we go. All right. Okay. So I think in order to go further with that, you folks are getting there. And I think what I'm going to do is share some writing samples so that we can look at those together. Okay. So what do you see here? We've got several comments from folks. Here's a writing sample. What kinds of skills do you see here? What are we noticing? Capitalized letters. Okay, we've got somebody doesn't get the function of capitalized letters yet, but sure likes them. Has got the spacing. Judy highlights that we've got a connection between the print and Mindy does as well. Okay, and Sarah's seeing that. Yeah, Leanne's noting writing in all caps. Okay. Sarah highlights that we've got the left to right, and so does Karen. Great. Okay, spacing. Great space placement on the line, right? Okay. So we are interesting use of colors, isn't it, Samantha? Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of it, but it does appear to be intentional, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. Oh, thanks there, Amy. We've got some fixing up even going on, don't we? Yeah. All right. So, we're seeing a number of things about letter formation. We're seeing a number of things about placement on pages and spelling, and concepts in print here, right? Okay. Let's look at a different writing sample. And I should make clear that this is part of a book that this child is writing. And the book was titled Transportations. And on the left there, that is not supposed to be a butt. It's supposed to be a boat. Just to be clear about that. All right. So what do we see here? Ah, we see some letter sound now going on, phonetic spelling, invented spelling. So we're seeing a lot of work on the relationship between letters and sounds here, don't we? Okay. Invented spelling. We've got some different terms for that, but lots of people are seeing that. Okay. And then Mindy's highlighting the illustrations here as well. And so we've got that correspondence between the illustrations and the print. Okay. Adrienne is showing us that that's the message matching the pictures. And yes, Karen, we've got a lot going on with those sounds, don't we? Hearing those middle sounds even there, right? In rocket, that's some serious work there. And even though we didn't get the right sound on boat, we've got we've at least got hearing it there, right? And left to right. So we've got some more conventions of print. I want to pause for just a minute and I want to notice something. We've given lots of attention to how this child has put a message on the paper, right? We're noticing the letter sound relationships. We're noticing the print orientation. I want to think with you a moment about the message, okay? This child is composing a book titled Transportations. It's several pages long, and we're seeing 2 pages here of boat and rocket, okay? This child, is it fair to say that this child is doing genre writing? Okay. And has a pattern, has picked up a pattern for how we do that. Of if we're going to write a book about transportation, we got one kind of transportation on each page, right? So yeah, it may be a special interest of his. In any case, however he's come at this child has figured out that a way we put print together, a way we put the ideas of print together, is to have a topic and then lay out the details. Okay, that's not a small accomplishment, right? In fact, one of the things that I would suggest is that if you look at the kinds of writing samples we get from young children, getting the letters down on the page, that's a big challenge. Having rich, powerful, complex ideas is every bit as much of a challenge as it is to put those, as it is to make that print. Okay. And let's play around with that just a little bit more. Let me show you another sample here. And this is a sample that's borrowed from this book, Already Ready. Katie Wood Ray and Matt Glover, one of my favorite writing books. They have all kinds of samples from children's composition. And I'm going to share one here I'm forgetting this child's name. My apologies. Oh, well, in any case, the child drew this drawing here. And when asked when asked what words to write, the child said, "My dog Pepper is running around the house." Okay? That's not the only page of the writing. Here's the next one. He runs around past the house and around the side. Can you see the house there and the dog and the kid? All right. Okay. I run and chase after him. That's the next page. Okay. And then I get him and put him in the garage and close the door. I love Pepper. What do you notice? That a succinct message, A story. Yeah. Okay. So, and Cheryl's noticing the drawing of each picture. We've got the continuity in the drawing. He has a concept of a story. Is that a big thing? That is a big thing, right? Think of all the writing dictation you've taken and the organization or early, well, I was going to say lack thereof. Let's say early stages of organization, right? Somewhat connected thoughts. You can see, oh, I'm wondering how they got from there to there. This is very clearly a story. This child is narrating what happens, right? Their dog got out somehow and he's running around the house and he runs after him and he gets him and gets him into the garage and then happy ending, right? And oh, Adrian, there's even a sense of audience here. This like there's a little drama and suspense, right? And ending with a happy ending. Yeah. So what I'm wanting to hold on to here is that while we do a lot of work with children about letter formation, left to right, capital, lower, lowercase, all of those if you were here earlier, we did a workshop on concepts of print, and that's all really powerful. Okay, those letter sound correspondences, and they absolutely need that. They also need to be able to develop a sense of what to say and how to say it. Right, writing is fundamentally about communicating a message, and you've got to have a message. So let's think about that. Just actually a quick note here. And I want to make a note about handwriting, not in any way to disparage it. And we know there's a lot of value in in children establishing handwriting, but I do want to be clear that when we're talking about writing, we are not only talking about the correct and letter and fluent letter formation. We're also and just as essentially thinking about how to express and represent ideas. Okay. As Jenny says, writing with a purpose. Okay. Or Donna, I see it, I write it. Okay. And so handwriting instruction is certainly related to writing instruction and there, but it's not equal to, right? So we're going to think as much about the ideas as we are going to think about the letters. All right. And for all us Illinois folks, well, I'm actually in Minnesota, but I feel an honorary Illinoisan, seeing as I get to work with folks every year. Um, the, the way the Illinois State Board of Education lays out writing in the standards and components of literacy is that it's its own separate. Okay, they've got it in its own little box there. And yet we know that writing is built on reading knowledge, right? That everything that's involved in being a successful reader, and if you were involved in the 5 previous workshops we did around reading, we've looked at all the different tools that children need to develop in order to be a reader, and reading being the receptive skill. And then you get these real fancy diagrams about how the receptive and expressive skills interact. And you can go read that book if you'd care to. But just for our purposes, that writing being this expressive skill, it leans on and interacts with all those reading skills. And then the sort of classic writing rope of looking at the skills that writers are developing in elementary and high school. But when we get to early childhood, what I'd like to suggest is that a formulation that makes it, I think, highly comprehensible and usable when we're looking at what are the skills that those writers are developing, okay, would be Judy Schickedance's model. I think works very well here. What she talks about is children as they are in preschool and emerging into kindergarten. She describes them as engaging in 4 journeys. Okay. And this looks a little different from what's on that writing rope because we're so early in the writing rope. And what I'd like to do with us is to think some about just trying to name each of those so that we're sort of in the same place on what we're trying to support. And then we will jump into shared writing and look at how we do that. So briefly, the idea with marks, where marks ends up is how do I make letters, right? But when children first start writing, they don't even necessarily know that there's something referred to as a letter, right? and they will make all kinds of marks on paper and come up to us and say, "What's this say?" Right? And then we get to try to figure out what to do with that, how we're going to respond. We could have some interesting conversations about that actually, when children are first making scribble marks. But they make those first scribble marks. They may organize those scribble marks in lines so that it looks more like writing. They may sort of chunk those scribble marks into distinct spaces so that it looks more like letters. Then they start using the strokes that writers would that we would use for letters and start making mock letters. And then maybe we are fortunate enough in the time that we are with them to see them form conventional letters. Oh, I should mention something actually. Um, I didn't talk about the handouts at the beginning. The first one is for note taking. The second one actually is a fairly detailed description of these 4 journeys. So if that's something you're interested in, there we are. All right. Actually, only 3 of them are described in detail, and we'll see why when we get to the fourth. But in any case, one of the things we want to be thinking about with children is how do we support them in learning letters, recognizing that some of them are not yet to the point where they recognize the idea that there's a distinct set of shapes that we need to use every time in order to form words. Okay. Kindergarten teachers, your kids have got that. Preschool folks, we're getting them there. All right. Word creation. So, hey, we've got these letter things. Can I just put any letters on a page and then that says stuff? Well, no, they need to be like certain letters for certain sounds. We need to, work on spacing. We need to, all of those kinds of things that go into figuring out how words are made. And so we're going to give kids some clues on that too, right? That words are made through relationships between letters and their sounds, that there are short ones and long ones, that children do some sensible but mistaken things on this sometimes. If you talk to children about words, they will often mistake syllables and words. So there's some work to do here. And then there are these aspects that we're going to make sure we land really solidly in these discussions. And that is that we do writing for a purpose. We have messages we want to communicate. And that's why people do writing. We don't do writing because teachers tell us to. We do writing because it gets us turns on the laptop, or because it tells somebody to leave our stuff alone, or because it lets us write a note to mom when we're sad, or because we want to say thank you to somebody, or because we want to ask for Christmas presents, or there's dozens and dozens of reasons why children write, and our skill at composing messages helps us realize those purposes. So, here's a simple message, okay, beginning message for a lot of kids, right? What's the first 2 words that many children write? Mom and love, right? Okay. And then we put those together because what's important to them, right? We saw a much more sophisticated message with the child with the dog Pepper. Here's another one, a story that Derek composed and was, obviously Derek didn't do the writing here. That this was dictated. Okay. The whales get nice to the people. This was one of a series of whales stories that Derek told. So I'll read it for you in case the print's a little small. A long time ago, there was people in a castle, and then big whales came in the castle, and they were swimming in there, and baby ones too. And the people said, "Ah!" And the whales said, "Don't be scared. We're nice." And the people said, "How are we ever going to get out of this deep water?" The whales said, "You just can ride on my back. Then you'll be out of this deep water. Then you can climb up a tree and then you'll be safe." And then the baby one said, "Hey, Daddy." And then the daddy one said, "What?" The baby one said, "I'm going to go play with my friends." So what do we notice in the difference in message in these two, right? What are we looking for in children's messages? Well, one aspect is simply length, right? Yeah, that's a fantasy story, isn't it? Yeah, we have a future I don't know if it's sci-fi. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about that. But this is obviously this child has sustained a long narrative. The thoughts are actually coherent and related, right? So we have some coherence. We have some details. We have a characters. We have a castle. We could say that there's some writing for audience going on here, and there's some voice. All right. So what I just want to highlight here is that this composition of a complex message is as much a writing accomplishment as all of that letter formation, right? And that we can nurture this as purposefully as we nurture the letter formation. We're going to need to think some about how to do that, though. All right. And an important part in getting there is just recognizing that that's part of our work. And if you go hang out in a third grade classroom, I'm tempted to ask our ninth grade teacher, but if you go hang out in a third grade or fourth grade classroom, one of the things that I hear from educators in those classrooms is that one of the largest challenges for children is actually having coherent thoughts to say. They're not used to being sort of given that space to have a voice. And so, if we can give them some practice in that, give them some orientation to that, and even some delight and sense of accomplishment in that, then that goes a long way. I also want to highlight this idea here. Message is an unconstrained skill. If you're not familiar with that phrasing, unconstrained skills, the theorist, oh gosh, Scott, forgetting his last name now, talks about literacy skills being constrained or unconstrained. Constrained skills are ones that there are only so many of. Once you get it, you're done. Once you learn 26 uppercase and 26 lowercase letters, there aren't a bunch of new letters to learn in seventh grade. Okay, you got it. Okay. Once you learn the letter sound relationships, you're done. All right. However, vocabulary isn't like that. There's always more words to learn. Messages aren't like that either. We can always come up with new levels of skill and detail and coherence in our writing. So nurturing message is really a lifelong skill. You know, we continue to strengthen our message skills even as adults. And then finally, what I'd like to offer on these journeys is the idea of purpose. And just what I want to offer here is that, you know, in school settings, children they get used to doing things, frankly, because we tell them to, right? Okay, so it's time to do this, it's time to do that, right? Skilled writers use, like, in our everyday life, we use writing to compose messages that accomplish things for us. And if we can give children that same sense, then we no longer have to like nudge them into writing. Instead, they want to do it. It's purposeful for them. It accomplishes things. And um, I'll commend to you that the third handout you have, the one purposes, some reasons young children write, a project of mine for the last, oh gosh, whole bunch of years now has been, as I'm observing in early childhood classrooms or teaching in them, is to just notice, why is that child writing? What are they trying to accomplish? And it's amazing what all children try to do. Okay. There's all kinds of reasons to write your name, everything from signing in to getting your name down because you want to be this character in a play. Okay. There's all kinds of things to write in the writing center, everything from holiday cards to love notes, and so on and so forth. So, if you're interested in, in promoting this idea of purposes, there's a whole handout for that. And what I want to leave you folks on there is that the reason purposes matter is because, there are reasons to do this. This is our motivation. Like, we want kids engaged, right? Let me just pause here. Karen, thank you. children hesitate to write because of getting things wrong, right? And in dictation, that frees them up. We're going to play some more now with that, or not quite yet, but let's hang on to that idea. So let me just share with you where it is I think we've landed. What I've tried to do with you, well, is to describe that there's sort of these four um, learnings that kids are engaged in. We're calling them journeys, right? Around learning how ultimately letters work. We've called that marks. How to put words together, how to put a coherent message together, and developing the idea that I can write for different purposes. In the Illinois Early Childhood Standards around purposes, there are three that are sort of privileged, and we want to make sure we're aware of those. There are lots of other reasons for children to write, but these are three that the state wants us to focus on for some useful reasons. But let's just remember opinion pieces, informative or explanatory texts, and narrating a single event. Just to take a minute here on informative and narrating. Let's go back here. Here's a narration, okay? And here is an informative, okay? So these children are actually writing inside the purposes and genres that the state of Illinois is trying to nudge us towards. All right, so there are, of course, many others, and we're going to look at, well, actually, let me just name a few of these here. Up on the top left there, that's Jackson. And he has a Post-it note there that he has put some, I think we could charitably refer to as mock letters on there. But Jackson's pretty clear what that note says on that Post-it, and it says, "This is my chair." Okay. So Jackson's writing for a very clear purpose of claiming property. All right. Down on the bottom right, we have a child who has put their name on a sign-in sheet, or not a sign-in sheet, but on a turns list because she wants a turn on the computer. On the bottom right, we have a love note from Zeta to Miss Molly. All right. And on the top right, we're going to explore this one a little more. We have a note that says, "Mr. Tunica L, please come back. Kayla." Their assistant is leaving their classroom. Okay. And if that isn't a powerful reason to write, I don't know what is, right? I'm sad because my favorite teacher's leaving. All right. So just what I want to highlight here is that when children start writing for purposes, amazing things happen. So let's just take a moment. And I don't know if anybody wants to name some other things that children write about. Sheila's telling us it's a functional tool rather than technical skill. Yeah, all right, to be practiced. And even mark making is meaningful to them. Absolutely. Sheila, we're I guess I can say on the same page about that, right? And that's part of what we want to hold up here. We want children to have that experience of writing being a functional tool, partly because they're motivated then, and also because when it's a functional tool and we use it for those functions, then they learn how to use it for those functions. Yeah, to share experiences. Virginia offers. Any other thoughts on what you've seen about list making, groceries, share making recipes? Yeah, okay, because then we can cook. All right, grocery lists for a school project or in the dramatic play, perhaps. Describing a character. Ooh, that sounds interesting. Labeling artwork. Absolutely. Letters to family. Letters to Santa. A field trip review. Oh, I like the idea of a review. Thanks. A menu telling a story. Rules. Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, so if I've made a tower and I don't want anybody to knock it down, we can have signs for all kinds of things, can't we? Asking for things, cards, voting, birthday cards. Yeah, recipe is a great idea. Drawings in journals to show emotions, lists. All right. Word wall, they like to copy and trace. Sometimes we just like to do the print, don't we? There we go. Want to learn how to make that word. So we've got a rich sense of children's writing here. And what I want to what I want to think with you about is how we get children to step into that writing. Because here's what I would suppose is that when you look at all those different reasons that children write there, writing to show emotions for friends, recipes, cards, signs in the room, you have some children doing that more than others, right? You have some children writing for every purpose there is to write for. You have some children sticking their noses in it sometimes. You have other children maybe trying to keep that at a distance, right? And we need to think a little bit about why that is. And I think, as has been suggested, there is a mechanics reason here, right? Some children are intimidated by the idea of trying to make marks on paper. Okay, so let's just be really clear about that. There's a whole handwriting aspect to that, muscle control aspect to that. As was suggested, spelling, I need to get it right. Okay, and as was suggested along with that, then one way to let go of that problem is to take dictation, right? So then they don't have to worry about the mechanics, all right? And that does liberate some children, right? Okay, if we can remove the fine motor challenges and remove the fear of not getting letters right, then some children, they've got things to say and they'll say them. But I would venture, and I'll just share my own experience, has been that some children also don't write because they don't see a good reason to. Okay, it's not, they don't see it as a functional skill for them. It's not a power they see a need to get a hold of, right? Okay, yeah, okay. So thanks, Donna. They don't get the writing's just talking written down, but then so we need to get them over that. All right. Okay, get them involved any chance they can. So we've got some ideas coming here, and I think what yeah, text doesn't hold the meaning even in, but that is a challenge, right? They need to get that correspondence there, and so they need so what I want to suggest to you is for these reasons, for kind of all of these, us modeling writing is a really powerful thing to do. So let me just see if I can jump into that. I've already talked about this. So, what I want to try to do with you is to sort of use shared writing to support young children's um, sort of skill with all of these instructional goals. But I want to make sure that we function on message and purpose. And we can certainly scaffold the print skills along the way, but we want to have children experience writing in ways that they can go, oh, that's about what I say written down. And when we do that, we can accomplish things with it. I can do something with it. Like Jackson putting that posted on the chair so that no one takes his chair, whatever that might be. So, how do they learn to write? Okay. Well, I mean, obviously there's a lot going on, but the sort of classic I do, we do, you do model is actually tells us something important here. And it actually is what's laid out in your standards. Okay. And what you'll see if you take apart your standards is there are four phrases that show up over and over again in the Illinois early childhood standards around writing. One is with modeling. That's the I do, right? And then the other three are all we do's, okay? With guidance, with support, with scaffolding, okay? And there's just frankly not that much of an expectation of proficiency on their own in preschool, okay? Kindergarten's another matter. And how we might think of that then is on a continuum from explicit instruction to guided practice to independent use. All right. And let me be clear about where we are with shared writing. Okay. Shared writing is not about taking dictation. It's not about a shared pen, not in the model that I'm going to offer. There are other models, but in the model that I'm going to offer is we're going to look at it as I'm going to call it an I do, we're going to actually invite some children's participation. But the key thing is going to be that we're going to do writing in front of children in ways that they can see the technique and the thinking that goes in to making it happen. All right. So, as we do that, we're going to be thinking not just about how to make the strokes and form the letters, but we're going to model writing for purposes as well. Okay. So, whatever kind of writing we would want children to be able to do. So, let me go back here when I look at your list of some things that we menus, field trip reviews, letters to families in Santa, signs in the room, asking for things, cards. We can model all of those through shared writing kinds of purposes. So let's go there. What to do with this? I think what I want to offer you here is that sort of the working model back behind all of this is that the writing we're going to do in shared writing is going to be writing that is for real purposes. It's for actually accomplishing something. Because when we do that, then children learn how to use writing in that way. All right. They not only see it as accomplishing something, but the sort of purpose, but they also get the technique. All right. So we're going to write in front of children, and it's going to be because we need to do writing in order to do something that's important to our classroom. All right. So let me just share where we are then. Okay. We've said that there are sort of four skills involved in writing: purpose, message, marks, and word creation. And I've said that there's an instructional sequence of I do, we do, you do, and that we're going to sort of land mostly on the I do in shared writing. Okay. So now that I've told you about this much about it, let's just check in. There are different models of shared writing, and I'm guessing that some of you are thinking of ones involving shared pens and so on. So, is there anything that we should surface as far as what people are thinking about when you think shared writing? And give you folks a little space. Rachel, the purpose is just as important. I think that's what we want to that's where we want to land. Writing for a purpose with student input and conversation. That's fairly where we are. And yeah, we do want to share ideas. And Judy, there are certainly models where it's truly coming from the child. And in what I'm going to model from you for you here, an awful lot of it's going to be coming from the adult because it is modeling. And that's not in any way to say that the models where writing is coming from the child aren't valuable. I totally want to say they are. And I want to suggest that they're going to be used more powerfully, perhaps, if we do some modeling, or they might be used by kids who wouldn't do it as much otherwise. All right. So let me jump in. I think we should just go there. All right. So here's the big idea is that what's going to happen is that the adult, well, I'll just read what it says there. The adult is going to compose and write in front of the children. And I want to highlight those two words in italics, not just write in front of the child, like make the marks, okay, also compose so that children can see how writers come up with ideas and create the coherence of whatever it is, a story or a message, whatever that is. We want them to see the process of coming up with a message just as much as we want them to see the process of putting the message down on. All right. And what's going on behind that is that when they see us compose and write in front of them, when they observe it, then they're seeing, like, oh, this is the whole picture of what goes on in writing. Okay. So, what does that look like? I think we've sort of said all this, right? That it shows how writing is done. We're going to be able to do it for different purposes. So let's get into how you actually do it. All right. The starting point is that we need to have something to write about. Okay. And what's essential for what I'm going to describe to you is that it needs to be something that the children know something about. All right. So some of you have been talking about writing about field trips or writing about a birthday or whatever that might need to be. It needs to be a topic that the children, it's an experience that the children have participated in, because if they've participated in it, then they can help share ideas for the composition of the message. All right. So this could be a thank you note to the parent who brought in the guinea pig. It could be a how-to book on how to care for a classroom pet. It could be, a request to the principal for us to be able to have more time outside in kindergarten, or whatever that might be, that is an actual purpose in your classroom that the children have ideas about. All right. So, just to be clear, this is different from what's typically done for a morning message. And this is not to say your morning message is this way, but just to highlight a couple things about what often happens in a morning message and how this differs from that. Oftentimes, a morning message is written before the children arrive. So the children don't actually see the adult putting marks on paper. Okay. This is going to be a process where the children are going to help put the marks on the paper. And the other aspect of that is that oftentimes in morning message, we have the same phrases being used over and over again. Today we are going to, and so on. And with what I'm going to suggest in shared writing is that this is very much a creative act of a message. And so there isn't going to be a sort of formula to what's written. Instead, we're going to be thinking together about, oh, if we're writing a note to the principal asking if we can stay out longer during recess, what do we need to tell her? Okay. So we'll need to figure out that message. So 3 steps. First, we're going to compose, and this is going to be done before we put any marks on the paper. And this is just about coming up with the ideas. What do we want to say? How do we want to say it? Well, like, what are we trying to accomplish? What's our purpose? And how do we want to say it? What kinds of words might we want to use? All right. And we're going to sort of talk that out loud with the children so that they can see the process of composition, and so that they can participate in it with us. Then we're going to write in front of the children, or with the children if they have some letter knowledge, right? And then finally, what you can do, not a requirement, but since we've got a writing sample in front of us and the children have helped us think about that, we can do activities where they step up to that sample. All right. So let's think about that composition. And the first thing here then is to choose a topic. And I don't think that we need to say too much about that right now, except I think I'd emphasize 2 things. One is you do have some topics in the early learning standards, right? Opinions, information or explanatory texts, and narratives are kind of the genres that are suggested, the purposes, right? But it needs to be something children have background knowledge about. Okay? They can't do an opinion piece on road construction, probably. Well, maybe they could. Depends on how much traffic they've gotten stuck in lately, right? But it needs to be something they have some knowledge about so that they can share some ideas and some words. I think what I'd like to do with you is think a little bit about what goes in to being explicit with children about the composition. We need to give them a reason for doing this writing. Do I want to tell you about that right now? Yeah, okay, yeah. So, and then we need to think some about what kinds of information we want to share. If we're, I'm going to give an example here in just a minute of writing a thank you note to the cooks, okay, for a breakfast. So if that's our reason, then what kind of information do we want to share with the cooks? Why are we sending them a thank you note? And then put those thoughts together into some kind of coherent whole. So let me just give you an example of what that might look like. All right. So Unfortunately, I do not have good quality video I can share of class interactions, so I'm going to model what the adult might do and sort of pretend we got some kids here as well, and hopefully that will work for us. So I might be sitting with the class at a classroom meeting and say something like, so this morning, when we were eating breakfast, I noticed lots of people were talking about how much we liked the breakfast this morning. Oh yeah, yeah. Jacqueline was talking about the pancakes and how, remember, you were pushing them on them with your finger and talking about how soft they were. Oh yeah, and Danielle, you said they were yummy. Oh, and oh, yeah, I remember, Elisa, you ate 3 helpings of pancakes, didn't you? We really liked those pancakes, didn't we? I was thinking it would be a good idea if we wrote a thank you note to the cooks. Sometimes when someone does something really nice for you, you can write them a note that says thank you. And then they feel good and maybe they'll do it again. And it's just, we've been practicing kindnesses, right? So how about if we do a thank you note together today? Okay, would you help me with that? You would. Okay, well let's think some about that then. So I was thinking that we should for sure say thank you, right? What should we say thank you for? Thank you for breakfast? Should we just say thank you for breakfast or should we talk about what was in the breakfast? Oh, yeah, we should tell them thank you for the pancake breakfast. That would be really good. We could say thank you for the pancake breakfast. And what did we like about those pancakes? Can you remember what was good about them? Oh, yeah, they were soft. Yeah, you were poking them with your finger and they were fluffy. Yeah, okay, so we can say that they were soft, and we talked about them being fluffy. That was another word we used for soft. Oh, Daryl, you noticed the holes, didn't you? Tell me about those holes. Yeah, you really liked the syrup in the holes, didn't you? That was so good having that syrup in the holes. Should we tell them we like the syrup in the holes? Okay, we'll tell them we like that too. Okay. And so we're going to tell them the pancakes. We like the pancakes. We're going to say that they were soft and fluffy, and we like the syrup in the holes. That's all good. Oh, let me think about one other thing with you. Were the pancakes just a little bit tasty, or are they really, really tasty? Really, 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 really tasty? Okay, we could say really, really, really tasty, but I want to teach you a new word. I want to tell you a word I'm thinking you don't know. Have you ever heard of the word scrumptious? Oh, let me tell you about that. Let's say that together. Scrumptious. Scrumptious is when something is super delicious, really, really, instead of saying really, 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 really tasty, you can just say scrumptious. You want to say that with me again? Scrumptious. I want to tell them the pancakes are scrumptious. Would you like to do that with me? Okay, let's tell them the pancakes are scrumptious. All right, so let's start writing it. We figured out what we're going to say, right? So now I'm going to I can't model the writing in front of you, but I will show it to you as we do. And as we do, we're going to talk about it. We're going to think it aloud. We're going to keep it relatively short because this needs to be a message they can hold on to and stay with. So let me just see what it might look like for it to turn out like this, okay? All right, so remember how we start a letter? We start with that word dear. And who are we writing it to? We have the cooks. So let's write dear cooks. Okay. And we were going to say thank you, right? Okay. Thank you for our, remember? Was it was it just a little bit tasty or really tasty? Really? What was that word for really? Scrumptious. Okay, I'll write scrumptious. Listen to what letter scrumptious starts with. S. Scrumptious breakfast. Okay, dear cooks, thank you for our scrumptious breakfast. Okay, now we should tell them about the pancakes. Remember what did we say the pancakes? They were fluffy. What else? Soft. Okay, The, okay, it's time for me to write pancakes. Yeah, P. Pancakes were S for soft, soft, and fluffy. Look at all these F's in fluffy. Fluffy. The pancakes were soft and fluffy. What else did we need to tell them? Oh, Daryl, the syrup, the holes in the syrup. Okay. We like the little holes, the syrups. There's another S word. Syrup goes in. Are we finished? Oh, I don't think so. Remember what we put at the bottom of a letter? We have to put our names too. But we have to write that other thing too, that closing word. Let's say sincerely. Sincerely. And I'll write T for turtles class here. And then look at all this extra room on the paper. You can write your names on it if you want to. Okay, so let me read it. Let's see if it says what we want it to say. Okay, let's check. Dear cooks, thank you for our scrumptious breakfast. The pancakes were soft and fluffy. We like the little holes the syrup goes in. Sincerely, Turtles class. Thumbs up? Okay. All right, so let's just pause there. What did you notice about the composing and writing? Any comments on things you noticed about the technique, strengths, things you would have changed? Welcome to put some comments in the chat. We can think some about this. Got some thumbs up. Everybody liked the pancakes today. Great. Just what did you notice about that? Loved how you had them help you sound out the beginning sounds of some words. Okay, so they are, as I'm writing in front of them, notice I didn't drag it down by doing 25 of those, but we did some of those along the way. Okay, something they can share. Voice and tone when thinking out loud is okay. Thank you for that, Gabriella. And I hope that I modeled being engaging. I mean, I'm excited. We're writing the cooks. We had great pancakes today, right? Why not get lit up about that, right? Editing as going along, better word for tasty. You know, Joy, I think one of the things we can model is that one of the things good writers do is they think about the words they want on those pages, right? And, plus, of course, they got a new vocabulary word, and that's great. But we modeled the idea that writers think carefully about what they're going to put down there. Okay. How you repeat, oh, I'm losing it. You're going too fast for me. Right. Okay. Repeated their ideas and gave suggestions at the same time. So we want to take their ideas in. And also, I have skills in sentence composition that they don't have, right? And this is my opportunity to model them. And they will have their own opportunities to do writing. So it's not like they won't get that. Okay. And yeah, Judy, you might have waited a little longer for their words, and yeah, and we make choices on that, and I think what I want to offer there is simply that we are doing this dance where we want to hear their voices, and this is the moment where they get to see how someone else does it as well. Okay, because some of these children, some of them are, actually, let me just pause on that with the voices. One of the challenges with voices is if I have 18 kids and they're all sitting there, my experience has been that unless I really curate it carefully, I get a lot of the suggestions from the same kids. And one of the things I want to do is either bring everybody in or I want to model for everybody this is what's possible. Okay. Many of the strategies used when building language. Absolutely. So that writing is as exciting as talking. Writing is talking put into these forms that we can use, right? Interaction and working together. So I think All right, let's see here. Scaffolding words, explaining the parts, introduce dear and sincerely, right? Emotional. Okay. So, and Kelly, I think, you know, I have to say that when I first started doing this technique felt a little weird for me because I was so used to taking kids' dictation, and I still, absolutely take kids' dictation. But what I saw, and I think what we're going to try to get to here is that when we have the opportunity to model like this, then what we get from kids' dictation changes because now children have new ideas about what they can do in their writing. And some children who may not have been giving very much dictation at all are now giving more and more complex and in genres and for purposes that they hadn't before. Okay. So, this is our chance to model the whole thing, right? And, when we do that, then, it changes what happens other times in the classroom. So this is an instructional moment and it has consequences for children's writing, I think is sort of where I want to land there. All right. So there is a possible third step for this. Oops. And the term I use for that, oops, is step up. And, you may use that term as well. Um, it's not one that everybody uses, but I'm borrowing it very directly from Leah McGee's work, where transforming literacy practices in preschool, who's the person who introduced stepping up to me as a sort of formal structure. And you do this, you may not have given it that name before. The idea here is if we have a piece of writing in front of children, and if the writing is large enough that they can discern what's up there. And if there's not so much of it that they can't make their way around it, then they can interact with it. Okay. And so there are a variety of things we can do. All right. One is that we can go back and read it several times. And as we do, we can discuss with them aspects of what's in that writing, and or we can simply look at it. Right. But, with regard to what we might do when we're interacting, excuse me, is we might do something like this. Okay? We might go back and, after having read it two or three times with them to get them with some familiarity here, is we might ask if a child would like to come up and find a word that begins with the letter S, right? For a child who that would be an appropriate question for, right? For a child who has a more discerning eye, we might invite them to come up and find some letter Fs because they were in fluffy, right? And we highlighted that. For some child, after we've read this two or three times and we've perhaps tracked the print, we might invite a child to, if someone wants to find the word scrumptious, right? Or the word syrup, or the word sincerely, or turtles, or whatever that might be. So we might find particular words that we have that through enough emphasis and repetition that they could find. Um, they might simply find a long word. Can someone find a short word? Can someone find a word with only two letters? Right? There's all kinds of different questions that that we could ask here. Um, you know, what I would highlight is that what you introduced in the writing would be the things that you would emphasize in the step up. So, I had children listen for those letter sound correspondences with the letter S and emphasize that. So that'd be something I'd play with. I'd play with those F's in fluffy because I emphasize that. That word scrumptious is one that the kids are gonna kind of love. So that's another word we can play with. I think the only other thing I want to say about the step up is that children will make mistakes, right? Provide visual aids. Yeah, provide visual aids. Absolutely. Um, and the mistakes are as much a part of the learning process as anything else, right? And so whether children get things correct or incorrect, when a child comes up and find, I think actually, let me just highlight that word feedback. That when the children are interacting with the print, the feedback that we give will be really key for the learning that goes on. So if I invite a child to come up and find the word pancake and they find it right away and they highlight it, that's terrific. We know one child knows how to do that. If I ask that child, how did you know that was the word pancake? And they say, they point to the letter P in pancake, then we can go, oh yeah, pancake, pancake. And we can all look together at that, right? So feedback for correct answers. And then, of course, the feedback when a child is looking for the word scrumptious and they find the word soft instead. And we can say, oh, here's a letter that begins with that S sound, just like scrumptious, right? S. Yeah. Let's look at the next letters here. S. O says ah. F says f. T says f. This word says soft. It begins with S, just like scrumptious, but it says soft. Soft. Scrumptious. There's another one that begins with S, but it's long. Can we find any other words that begin with S? Oh, here's one, and there's, oh yeah. And so we can, that feedback process becomes important for children being able to make sense and learn from what they just did. In your handouts, there's actually I think it might be the fifth handout. There's one that describes, no, it's the fourth one, that describes a number of different strategies, I guess more techniques for doing step up. And I think what I would just emphasize there is you've probably done this before, and the key thing is to scaffold your step up for what children are capable of at that time of the year. At the beginning of the year, it might just be counting letters. It might be finding a particular letter. Later in the year, you can find letters, in the middle of words and at the end of words, and you can, make sense of long words and short words, and so on and so forth, and talk about all different kinds of concepts of print. An interesting one that I've seen actually that late in the year actually that I saw a teacher do that's like, oh, I never thought to do that one, but that's really an interesting one for what it has you do is find the word with the most letters on the page. Okay, so then, somebody says pancakes and we count the letters. The one that looks like it might be longer. Oh, let's count the letters in sincerely and so on. So we get a bunch of really careful attention to the print. But in any case, they're, looking at those step up activities. There's a whole bunch that we can do at different times a year. All right. I think what I'd like to just mention now is that there are similarities and differences between this model and others. Sometimes this is done with repeating text structures. Some of you, if you have a book about pets, then you write do a writing activity where children are sharing their ideas about what they would want from a pet, and then we scribe those using a sentence stem. So we might have Monica wants a squirrel for a pet. Jaquan wants a dragon for a pet. Um, Randy wants a guinea pig for a pet. Whatever that might be, and those could be used in similar kinds of ways. Of course, all kinds of interactive writing, and we don't need to get, there's all kinds of literature on that as well. Similar, but this is very much, yeah, this lands more on the modeling, the model that I'm giving you. Once we've modeled one writing, okay, so let me be clear about something. When we do this writing here, okay, what we would hope to have happen is we have turned loose a new purpose and genre in our classroom. And what I would hope to see happen would be that we would come up with all kinds of reasons to write thank you notes, and so would children. And so somebody writes a thank you note for somebody, a kid, Elise lost her glove. Patrick found it. Elise writes Patrick a thank you note. Okay. Whatever those sort of authentic moments are in the classroom. So that once this purpose is established, we want to see a whole lot of writing happen this way. And of course, the way to have that happen is for us to continue to model it, for us to take dictation from children, for it to be set up as a structure in dramatic play and in the writing center and all those kinds of ways that we can have that happen, right? Um, and then we start looking at other genres, right? So love letters, right? Um, Here's a love letter that I modeled in one classroom, okay, up on a smart board, with some writing assistance from a child, as you can tell there. Okay. I wrote a love note to my sister. Okay. Made it as simple as possible. So it was very, possible for kids to enter into the genre. Dear Gretchen, I love you. I miss you. Love, Jonathan. Okay. And I printed it off and sent it to her. And, the marvelous thing about that is in a week or 10 days, something like that. This was back before the mail got so incredibly slow. I got a letter back from my sister, okay, which shows you how it works, right? She was a little concerned that I didn't have that much to say, but I explained it to her and we worked it out. But the important thing here is that when I modeled this genre, composing it, I did the composition with the children. It's like we started with dear, and I told them about how you end with love, and that my message was that I miss you, and so on. Then children started writing love notes as well, right? And here's Zeta writing a love note to Miss Molly, okay? And here she is giving it to Miss Molly, which is the best part of any love note, right? It's giving it to that person and making them smile and getting a hug and all the rest of that. And once I had done that, and then Zeta had done it, and the kids in the class had seen Miss Molly react to Zeta sending her a love note, everybody in that classroom was giving Miss Molly love notes, right? Because why wouldn't you? Okay. And here's a shared writing sample from another classroom where the writing was actually a Play-Doh recipe, right? And once again, the key thing here is just that the teacher composed it in front of the children. And then, the power of a recipe was they made Play-Doh. So kids figured out, oh, I can do I can do writing, and it shows people how to do things, which actually is one of the Illinois standards, right? Informative and explanatory pieces, right? So in this classroom, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, by ninth grade, they got to get this, don't they? Go, we're going to start them early. So, but if you model this in a classroom and you model it often enough, then kids get the idea that they can create how-to books, and I'll share one with you. Okay, this is Yvette's how-to book about how to make a banana sandwich, a very important thing to know how to make. And Yvette thought this was so important for everybody to know that she wanted the teacher to take pictures of it so that her book could be illustrated. So this is a how-to book complete with photos. Okay, How to Make a Banana Sandwich by Yvette. 1, cut a banana. Okay. 2, put jelly on the bread. So Yvette's doing this step by step and dictating it, and the teacher's writing it down, and then we got to make the photos. 3, spread it around. 4, put the bananas on. 5, fold it over. Lots of folding. 6, eat it. Well, now Yvette's banana book was a sensation in the classroom, of course, and it went into the reading corner, and everybody had to read it, and everybody was kind of amazed. And of course, then everybody decided they had to do their own how-to books, right? So, I forgot the most important page. Yum. Okay, right. So, Then we've got dictation from Tyrese on how to make a butter sandwich. And we've got dictation from Jackson on how to make rings, which involve putting large quantities of glue and paper around your finger and kind of squeezing them. You don't want kids using Jackson's recipe for rings, but we're using this on Haitian Revolution. Okay, so you go from banana sandwiches to the Haitian Revolution, gradual release of responsibility. And once again, thank you, Mark. Your example gets you that when students, we call them students by ninth grade, right? When students have seen you do it, then they not only know how to do it, but they get the purpose, right? And so now we got everybody making how-to books. Okay, phone message. I thought this was brilliant. I got to tell you about this one. Okay, so this teacher, this is morning meeting time. Okay, she's doing her morning meeting. And in the middle of her morning meeting, her cell phone rings. Okay. And she answers it. It's actually her literacy coach. And her literacy coach is telling her, "Oh, you have a meeting today after school." And so so she tells the class, "Oh, wait just a minute. It's Miss Mary Beth, and she's telling me about a meeting after school." "Okay, Miss Mary Beth, I have to write it down so I don't forget." And so she takes a message, like writes down a phone message in front of the children. "Meeting today at 3:30. Bring whatever it was she was supposed to bring." Okay. She actually took that message in front of the children because she was modeling writing for a purpose. And so then you go to dramatic play, they set it up for kids to give phone messages, right? So now all the children are wanting to call somebody on the phone and give a message. And so they're taking messages, right? And here's a message. It's not a lot of print involved, but this is a child who's very motivated to write, right? They've got it all down in dramatic play. All right. So once again, the shared writing is a teacher models writing, then children go for it, right? Um, oh geez. Mark, I got no ideas on spelling for older kids. I got like I'm going to have to punt on that. I'm afraid I can't get you there. If there's an elementary teacher in the audience who can connect with Mark, um, I don't know what's happening to spelling these days in elementary grades. So phone, yeah, okay. Is that right? Oh no. Okay, well, someone needs to get on that. So shopping lists, teacher made a shopping list for a class project. This was back in the days when you could actually look at it in the newspaper. Okay, so and then children, of course, are making their shopping lists, right? Remember, I told you about, I showed you that writing sample of the teacher saying to come back to Miss Tunica, to Mr. Tunica L. The reason she thought to do that at all was because the teacher, the same teacher, had modeled for the children Mr. Tunica L was going to be leaving, and she was sad about that, and she wanted to write him a note telling him that she was going to miss him, and so she modeled writing, and I don't know, what would you call the genre? I'm sad you're going away. Is that a genre? I mean, it was in that classroom, right? It was certainly a purpose, and so she wrote that in front of with the children, composed it with the children, wrote it in front of the children, and then put materials in the writing center and offered support. And this child said, well, you can see the writing there. And then when the teacher asked if they wanted her to dictate it for conventional print, this child said, "I love you, Mr. Tunica L. I made a song for you, and I want you to come back." Right? Right? And then I've already showed you Kayla's writing sample, right? "Mr. Tunica L, please come back, Kayla." Right? And I think what I want to hold on to here is here here are things that were very near and dear to children's hearts, right? This person that they'd loved, that they'd played with, they'd been read to by and gotten hugs from and helped them there. You know everything you are in a child's life. This person is leaving and they're experiencing grief about that. And the teacher showed them a way to use writing to express and share that grief. Okay. And I mean, if that isn't a powerful reason to write, okay. So I think, oh, yeah, Jackson with his property sign, right? If we model that, Kaylin saving her spot. This Danica found that little turquoise. She was sure it was a jewel. Okay. And nobody was quite sure how it showed up in the classroom, but she was sure it was a jewel and she didn't want anybody to take it. So she had the teacher make a note saying, "No one take this jewelry." And she put her name there, Danica, right? Okay. So, claiming stuff is a really good reason to write. We can model that, right? We can put signs, we can say, don't touch, or this is the teacher's, whatever that might be, right? Okay. Um, yeah. Oh, you wrote, had them write a welcome. So when we've got a purpose, we write a welcome letter, whatever, and journaling, and yeah, and then they go do it on their own. That's when you know that shared writing has been successful, is when students take that and use that genre with support from you probably still, but they use it on their own. Turns list, same thing. Um, and I think this is what I'm saying here is that this is like shared writing is not the end, it's the beginning of a sequence where we support children in other with other at the writing center or during free writing time or journal time or whatever that might be, where they do writing in this for the same kinds of purposes and in the same ways. Um, yeah, it's looking for ways to to give this I do so that students go, oh, look what's possible, and look at all the skills involved in that, and then we find ways to support with we do's, and it's not going to be you do's very often in an early childhood classroom where they do it entirely on their own, but I guess in terms of planning shared writing, I just invite you to think about what kinds of experiences have happened recently in your classroom that children have sort of a rich body of knowledge around, and that might benefit from some writing, and then think about a genre that would fit in, and put together a few ideas for yourself so that you're not completely um, compl- I have found it's helpful to think a little bit ahead of time before I enter with the kids. But you do you on that. To pull this together, I think what I'd offer was we started out by just talking about the skills that children are developing. I tried to put an emphasis on message and purpose being as important as the letter formation. And so we want to model for children not only this is how I put together, the letter B, and this is how I write the word pancake, but this is why I might want to write it all, and this is how I put together my ideas so that you are seeing writing as a powerful tool that you can use for purposes that are exciting or delightful or just get you what you want, whatever that might be. Okay. Um, Tried to describe these kinds of steps for going into the process, doing the composing in front of the children, and the composing, that's the ideas part, and make our thinking visible, both what we want to say and how we want to say it. Play around with word choice, get ideas from them. Okay, do the writing in front of the children, how much you invite of their knowledge, of course, depends on the children and the time of year. And then once we have a message in front of the children, then we can analyze what's up there with them. And everything from letters to words, and depending, of course, once again, on their levels of skill. Um, So let me just pause here and give you a couple minutes to think about if there's something that you're noticing from this strategy or some of the tools in it that you might want to use, and give you a moment to identify that. As I just about always say, the most important part of any of these sessions is what you do with it afterwards. So if you want to think about an action step for you, this is a moment to give you that. Um, all right. The love notes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, Mark, you should come play with the young kids. You don't have to worry about spelling at all because they can't. Well, no, that's not true. They can. We're totally fine with them using letter sound associations, right? Yeah, yeah. The step up is useful all the way through, right? Okay. Writing in front of Melissa, thank you for that. I think we have tended to write for in front of to write beforehand, but when we write in front of children, then they can see not only how to write the word pancake or whatever, but also those ideas. So yeah, great. Modeling writing. That's what we got going on here. Yeah. All right. Shared writing with the whole group. Step up. Yeah, love notes. Thanks. All right. Okay. Um, yeah. As you're sort of collecting your own ideas, and I think what I'm seeing here is that the fundamental thing that people are taking is that we can write in front of children and model not only the sort of print techniques, but also the craft of being a writer, right? Okay, and that we can do that in so many different genres. Okay. Um, if it's useful to be in touch at any point, there's contact information for me here. Please feel free to email. Otherwise, I think I want to just thank everyone for being here tonight, for your work with children. Um, and I, I think if I gave a bottom line for me on all of this is that writing is powerful and delightful. And, let's just do it with them and help them enjoy it and help them see how it gets things that we want. And, you know, reading and writing really are power, and we're richer in our lives for them. So enjoy that with the kids. Thanks to all of you. All right. Take care.